Hey, what's up everybody? In this video, we're going to take a look at the JavaScript development environment, specifically the file structure that is part of this environment. So we're just going to look at VS Code. We're going to see how the files are there. Luckily, it's pretty small. This will be very simple, be a quick video. Let's get started. The JavaScript development environment, when you download it from the Integrating Magic GitHub site, when you use it as a template, comes with a few files, a FileMaker file, and a host of things that make this all work. It's not important to know exactly how this works, but this video will explain how it is. So let's take a look, starting with the package.json file. Package.json file is basically the description of this repository. At the top here, you can see the metadata. There's some metadata that you can adjust, and that makes sense. As you create a new repository and you put it into a chart, make a chart with it or whatever, you want to update this metadata to describe what this is about. The next part are the scripts. The scripts are under the hood code that's run when we type an npm command in the terminal. So we could type in start, type in build, we could type in upload, build, upload. We might be even able to type open file, although I haven't tested it for a long time. I'll make sure that that's working. So these are the basic scripts. If you ever need to know what scripts are available, you can. And by the way, if you do have a certain extension installed, which we'll take a look at, you can actually see those scripts down here as well, so that you could actually just click on one instead of having to type it in the browser, in the terminal. I tend to use the terminal because I forget about this, but this is available as well. The next section is the dev dependencies. These are the libraries that is required to make this work. These dev dependencies run for us. You can see that there's Parcel there, which is the entire library that is doing all the work of starting the development server and then packaging up the file for deployment. Right now we don't have it, but sometimes, and most often, there is a dependencies object as well. This dependencies object, whatever is in here, describes the libraries that we are using in this project. As soon as I install C3 or data tables or date range picker or whatever it is, that library information gets put here so that we can see the name of the library and the repository. Okay, so that's it with the package.json. Let's go on to the next part. At the very top level is our index.html file. You can see that it's not in any folders, it's just sitting out here on its own. And this is what the browser is picking up on for rendering purposes. This has the style, it has the elements that will render on the page, and for very much important purposes, it has the JavaScript that will run this web page. Clicks, interactions, library renders, whatever the case may be. So this index.html is used and it just stays right there. Next part is this source file. The source file, src, contains our index.js and our style.css. This is where we're going to do a majority of the work. It's in this folder. This is just a typical folder structure for working. The index.html is at the top root, and then the JavaScript and CSS files are spread throughout the project. We could have another structure here. This is just the structure that I've chosen, and it all works together. You can see that in the index.html, we're importing the index.js by writing the file path to the index.js file. And if we were to add other JavaScript files, we could certainly do that. We would likely put them into this source folder, maybe even in their own folders. And we'll explore that as we go throughout. The scripts folder here contains one file called upload.js. This is just a bunch of variables and actually it is just all variables that contain hard-coded pieces of information about the database that we are going to deploy our code to. In this case, the file is JSDev, which comes with the repository, and there's a script in there called upload to HTML. This is only used when we do the build process and then we upload the code to the FileMaker file. And in another video, I explain how to take this, to update this JavaScript file so that it will attach to your client file or a real production file. The JSDev file is the FileMaker file, which we'll look at separately, but you can explore it. There's just a few scripts in there. There's a few layouts and tables. You are a FileMaker developer. You can read through that and see what's going on there. Obviously, we can't open it up here in VS Code, but I have an extension installed that allows me to open an application, and we'll take a look at extensions in another video. The next file we'll take a look at here is this Readme. This Readme is a great place to write documentation about your repository. You may want to add to-dos in here or feature lists or bug fixes, whatever strikes you as adding this. This is a Markdown file, so you will have to take some time to understand how Markdown works, but this is a good source to write documentation about the repository. And there's two last folders and one more file. This Git Ignore file is just a list of the files or folders in this repository that we're going to ignore when we use the Git process to update to version control our code, to commit it, to push it back up to GitHub. So don't need to know a whole much about this at the moment, but it is worth exploring. This node modules folder here is a folder that contains all of the JavaScript libraries that we are using in this environment. Right now, there's a lot in there because all of these folders contain JavaScript that the dev dependencies for this environment need. As soon as we install a library like C3.js, that library, that folder will be placed into here. And you can see that after you do that. And we've looked at that in training times. But this is just some JavaScript that does certain things. Most of this will not be bundled up with the code. Most of this will be left here in the repository when we do a build and we bring it to FileMaker. One more thing about the node modules folder. When you first download this template and start using it, this node modules folder does not exist. It's only when you type in npm install does that then exist. Npm install command goes up to the internet, gets all of the dependencies and the dev dependencies and all of those libraries dependencies, and it puts them into that node modules folder, and it creates the node modules folder for you. So that is a little bit about the environment. You can read more about it on the JS in FM site, and you'll get familiar with it as you start using this. So there you go. I look forward to talking with you more about this JSDev environment. But until then, talk to you later.